A very good evening and welcome to all the participants to this very interesting webinar, which is 42nd in our series. We have with us a prestigious, distinguished General A.V. Subramanian with us. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome General A.V. Subramanian to this webinar. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
We also have Professor R. Prasad with us, who is my colleague and who is also going to moderate the session with respect to questions and answers as we get into that section. I'm very happy to let you know that today we have a very interesting topic, and this topic is otherwise very difficult to understand. And we have someone who has worked in this sector at the apex level, and he is an authority on this subject, and we are having the benefit of his presence, and I'm sure we're all going to learn about Atmanirbharta today. So let me start the session with a brief introduction to the guest. As I mentioned, we have General A.V. Subramanian with us. He's going to talk about Atmanirbharta in defense, opportunities and challenges in the defense manufacturing sector. Broadly, the initial talk will be about 30 minutes, followed by a question and answer session of another 30 minutes. Total 1 hour session we are going to have this evening. General A.V. Subramanian is a graduate of the Vivekananda College, Chennai. He was commissioned into the Army in December 1974. He graduated from Military College of Electronics and Mechanical Engineering, Secunderabad in 1979. He obtained his master's from the prestigious IIT Kanpur in 1982. He was awarded the Master's in Management Studies by Osmania University in 2000. He spearheaded the design and development of training simulators for the Indian Army. The military wheeled and tracked vehicle driving simulators developed by him have been assimilated by the Army in their training system. At the apex level, he was responsible for the entire capital acquisition by the Indian Army during 2012 to 2014. He has also spearheaded the development of private industry to contribute to defense production after that. As part of his advisory roles, since his superannuation in March 2014, he was called upon by Ministry of Defense to be a member of the Committee of Experts on Acquisition and Strategic Partnership with Indian Industries. He was part of the Ministry of Defense Task Force to develop criteria for identification of strategic partners to broaden the defense industrial base of the nation. Subsequently, he worked on structuring a defense acquisition organization. He also studied the functioning of ordnance factories and recommended way forward. He is now involved in the development of defense corridors and capability building of indigenous aerospace industry. So with this brilliant background and track record, I will straight away get into the topic, and I request General A.V. Subramanian to start this topic. But before that, briefly, I would like to thank the entire team which worked behind the scenes to request General's time and his expertise on this very important topic for this evening. Colonel Sukumaran, who coordinated, deserves the credit for his coordination. Thank you very much, sir. And Professor Prasad, who has coordinated a lot much before it came to this stage. Thank you very much, Professor Prasad, as well. Now, with this, I will stop sharing my screen and I request General A.V. Subramanian to start. Over to you, sir. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sudhakar Rao, for such a fine introduction. I've definitely been looking forward to this opportunity of interacting with the ICFAI community who have taken this major initiative to go online and educate in a very fine medium of these webinars, which you have been consistently conducting. And I have been fortunate enough to listen to these, which are the recordings which are available. And I find this to be an excellent kind of a medium in which we can really share some of our thought processes. I have taken a weighty topic to speak in this event. I do realize that the challenges which are there in covering this whole topic. So my effort will not be to cover the complete topic, but uncover a few salient points of this topic. My screen has been shared, and I'm sure that you are able to see my screen as of now. The topic of my discussion must be Atmanirbharta in defense, opportunities and challenges in the defense manufacturing sector. When I take on this topic and then speak to you about this, I would be following the following agenda. First, I will talk about the evolution of defense technologies. Then we'll spend a little bit of time on the defense manufacturing ecosystem. In this manufacturing ecosystem, I will start from the requirement specification to the research and development and to the production, and probably highlight a few instances, and particularly Tejas, the light combat aircraft, how a national effort has gone into it, and what is happening with respect to that emerging private sector as of now. And for you to relate after my talk is over, a wide variety of web resources are available. Some of them I will refer them to you, and finally conclude with the challenges that are there for us to reach towards this Atmanirbharta. Must begin by paying my respect to the scientist president, Dr. Abdul Kalam, with whom I have had the great fortune of being guided by him, and then to have worked under him. And he propounded 3 visions for this country. And then he said, first vision is that of the freedom, second vision is that of the development. The third vision that he said is about the strengthening of this nation. His phrase was, strength respects strength, and hence, unless the nation becomes strong, it will not be counted as a significant partner in the Committee of Nations. So for that, very deep foundations are to be laid, used to be his adage at every time I had opportunity to interact with him. When we talk about the strength of this nation, it gets influenced by many methods: diplomatic, military, technology, economic, military, culture, social values. So many other factors actually come into defining the strength of this nation when you are taking the world community together. Particularly, we will look at some of the military related, and I may touch upon diplomacy and technology also in between, and all of them will get connected because of the economical constraint. Those who are interested in history, I commend you to read about Professor P.M.S. Blackett, Patrick Maynard Stewart Blackett. He, a Nobel laureate, awarded Nobel Prize for Physics in 1948. On the recommendations of the British government, he came to India as a military scientific consultant. We read the web book, which is available by Robert Anderson on the net. And those who want to understand about Blackett may read the Stephens book, which is also shown on the screen. The photograph that is there as part of this, which is posted there, is Blackett himself sitting along with the military leaders of that time and trying to talk about as to how India should be looking at its military power. He said that there is a two-phase strategy, a short-term one and a limited manufacturing capacity to be built over a longer term. And he felt that probably military power need not be built initially when India is starting. We must manage everything through the diplomatic efforts. This had its influences. It had the way in which India shaped its defense spaces. I would like to put the development of the defense ecosystem in the country into 4 phases. The first phase, driven by Blackett's idea, is up till around 90 or so, where everything was driven by public sector and technology transfer models were the one which were adopted, mostly guided by what the Soviets shared with us. With the liberalization that set in because of Prime Minister Narasimha Rao driving with Mr. Manmohan Singh as the finance minister, opening out of many sectors, including defense happened, and we had a diversified inventory of Indian defense adopted with France, Israel, US, Britain, all of them contributing towards the defense effort. And we had the dominance of the public sector, but the private sector had just started emerging. The third phase happened from 2014 onwards, particularly after Mr. Manohar Parrikar took over as the defense minister, where he said that the modernization of the armed forces is not just simply its hardware, it has got to be dealing with the strategy, and then all the capabilities of this nation must be brought in. And that's where he spearheaded the introduction of strategic partnership and development partners, primarily derived from the private industry into the armed forces. Then came the pandemic. The pandemic drove home this point that we no longer are going to be on cost-effective supply chains, but we want highly reliable supply chains. And particularly for defense, this reliability has got to be higher. And that one can come about not just simply by Make in India, but we have to do things by ourselves right from the beginning. And hence, Prime Minister, when he unrolled the economic packages for India based upon the effects of the COVID pandemic, he propounded this idea of Atmanirbharta. Atmanirbharta across many sectors in the country, but particularly he emphasized on defense. And after that, he has been setting in motion multiple efforts towards this. Some of the recent ones that you might be witnessing or might be interested, those who have watched the Republic Day parade would have seen that as a part of the Swarnim Jayanti, that is the 50th year completion of the Indo-Bangladesh War, the Republic Day parade was embellished with the hardware, military hardware that was used by during the 1971 war. The Centurion tanks, the MiGs and the Hunters and other aircrafts which were used during that time, the INS Vikrant model, they were all paraded on the Rajpath. Those who were interested might have noticed it. On 1st of February, Madam Nirmala Sitharaman, she presented the budget for this country, and the highlight of the defense budget is that the defense budget has seen a marginal increase with a substantial increase of 68% of the capital procurement amount actually reserved for the Indian industry to supply, which is an immediate focus on the Atmanirbharta initiative. Now, these are the recent events which you might have been privy to, but behind this, a considerable amount of effort has been going on. First is the formation of the Department of Military Affairs. We would know General Bipin Rawat. Sadly, we lost him very recently in an unfortunate accident. But the first combined defense staff, he was the head of it, to put Army, Navy, and Air Force together. And this Department of Military Affairs has been formed as part of the Ministry of Defense. Then we also have defense production, which has been acknowledged fully first in the defense procurement procedure of 2016, which got upgraded to the defense acquisition procedure of 2020. And in that, considerable amount of changes which have been brought in terms of Indian designed, developed, and manufactured items being given the highest preference for procurement. And the innovation for defense excellence has been mooted. For IDEX, a website has been done and multiple challenges have been set up in the IDEX. One effect of the IDEX challenge was the 1,000 drone display, which happened during the Beating the Retreat event, was a find which happened during the IDEX explorations. To fund private sector R&D, Technology Development Fund has been instituted. Now funds of the order of 10 crores are advanced for technology development, in which DRDO and the Army, Navy, and Air Force get involved with private industry for development of projects. Strategic partnership, by which private sector will be manufacturing platforms, is already on the anvil, and we are expecting this to take off for the military multi-utility helicopter project very soon. Along with this, during the pandemic time, the space sector has also been open to the private participation, which is a very significant move because space and defense are highly linked. The ordnance factories, which are more than 40 in number, were excellent infrastructure, but too unwieldy an organization to handle. And hence, these ordnance factories have been now carved into 7 defense companies, and they have been dedicated to this nation. Because of this, these 7 new defense companies have become more dynamic and more focused and working closely with the private sector. We have promulgated lists for indigenous sourcing, in which items of more than about 300 items have been identified, which will be progressively banned from import, will be sourced only from Indian sources. And apparently, DRDO, Defense Research and Development Organization, has also published a list of areas where it will not do R&D, it will leave the private sector to do R&D, but do the hand-holding for them. For indigenous acquisition, like I pointed out in the current budget, 68% has been reserved for funding. Promotion of export of military hardware is being sustained through all our diplomatic missions, especially with those countries where there is a potential for Indian military hardware to be exported. Our diplomatic corps has been co-opted into this. And the government has also announced 2 defense corridors, one in Tamil Nadu and the other in UP. The Tamil Nadu and the UP corridors are focused on the defense and the aerospace sector. In the Tamil Nadu corridor, 5 nodes have been identified: Chennai, Tiruchirappalli, Coimbatore, Hosur, and Salem. Similarly, we have the nodes having been identified as Aligarh, Lucknow, Kanpur, Chitrakoot, Jhansi, and Agra in the Uttar Pradesh corridor. It is connected with these corridors having come in. We are expecting that a focused development of ecosystem will actually take place, and it will be possible for government to unroll policies which will incentivize investment into these corridors. Let me now get into the overall defense ecosystem. Primarily, must talk about the defense research and development establishments. There are more than 50 laboratories of the DRDO which are involved, which are organized discipline-wise in aeronautics, armaments, naval systems, particularly in aeronautics, Aeronautical Development Authority, Aeronautical Development Establishment, Aerial Delivery Research and Development Establishment, Center for Airborne Systems, and so on, which contribute towards development of aeronautics platforms. Apart from the conventional set of the disciplines in which the DRDO had been working, recently the DRDO has also entered into artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, cognitive technologies, asymmetric technologies, and smart materials. And mostly they are connected with the Indian Institute of Technologies, in which the DRDO labs have been associated, and they will be developing these technologies. We have a well-developed public sector undertaking structure that we have. Hindustan Aeronautics leads the pack. Bharat Electronics is the largest producer of radars in the world. Bharat Dynamics Limited is the manufacturer of missiles. Bharat Earth Movers Limited has been providing support for considerable amount of land-based systems. Particularly Mishra Dhatu Nigam Limited, Midhani, is a Hyderabad-based firm which produces the special materials which are necessary for military and also for space. And then we have 4 dockyards: Mazagon, Garden Reach, Goa, and the Hindustan Shipyard, all of them contributing towards the indigenous development of naval vessels. No wonder that Navy has been spearheading this indigenous Atmanirbharta effort using these dockyards. But let's take one DPSU, Bharat Electronics. It has got multiple units. Multiple units are addressing multiple requirements of the armed forces. We have the Pune units, which is looking at electro-optics and the batteries which are required. The Bangalore unit is the major unit which looks at all military communication. The Ghaziabad unit is the one which takes care of the radar requirements. The Hyderabad unit takes care of the electronic warfare requirement. And the Chennai unit particularly takes care of the tank-related electronics, the tank and the guns which are necessary for the army. When you talk about tanks, for military tank, for it to be functioning, there are more than about 200 subsystems are necessary, in which electronics goes immensely. And apart from that, considerable amount of mechanical systems are there. A decent amount of fire control systems and the gun itself that it carries, all of them are engineering challenges for us to reach. Till today, we are still not good at making the power packs for these tanks. And there is a major effort that is being launched now to develop these 1,500 horsepower and beyond power packs in the country, which are required for these tanks. And these tanks lead us to the factories, ordnance factories. The tanks have been produced in ordnance factories. Now these ordnance factories have been divided into 7 new companies. Munition India Limited takes care of the ammunitions. The Armored Vehicle Limited takes care of the armored fighting vehicles, that is the infantry combat vehicle, and the military tanks, the T-72 and the T-90 varieties of this. And then we have the advanced weapons. Troop comfort systems are the ones which actually take care of all the cold weather clothing related ones. India Optel Limited takes care of the optoelectronic systems. The Gliders India Limited primarily addresses the parachute requirements of the armed forces. Let's spend a little bit of time in understanding this behemoth called Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, a huge conglomerate which has got multiple units spread across this country. This had been producing military aircrafts under license for considerable period of time, be it the MiG variety, be it the Su aircraft, be it the Mirage varieties of aircraft they had been producing. The first and the major attempt that we did for indigenous manufacture of aircraft is actually the Tejas. You must definitely give it that the Tejas is a shining star for us to be very proud of. When we are making military fighter aircraft, we must remember it is not just simply the hardware. It is the flight equations which actually make you realize this aircraft, which is a closely guarded national secret. Every country which wants to make its fighter aircraft will have to discover these flight equations by itself. It took us considerable amount of time and effort, and must kudos to our Indian academicians and the scientists who actually mastered the flight controls, which resulted in this light combat aircraft being realized. When we realize a military aircraft, fighter aircraft, it is a national effort. This map captures the effort that is involved in this country for us to realize an aircraft of this variety. There are considerable amount of names which are there, many which are government organizations, many which are private organizations. Tata Consultancy Services provided considerable amount of design support. All design software, everything came from them. Vaishi Shikha from Ambala is the one that provided many testing facilities which are necessary for us. Like that, you can go about counting number of various private sector and large amount of public sector organizations which came together for us to realize this. If you look at it region-wise, you will find this aerospace is mostly dominant with respect to its subsystem development in the southern and the western zones because of the technology advances that have taken place, and also the kind of ecosystem, industrial ecosystem that is available here. Rightly so, the Tamil Nadu Industrial Corridor is an aerospace and defense corridor, while the UP corridor is a defense corridor. When we talk about fighters, we talk about generation of fighters. There are first, second, and the third generation. The fourth generation is the Mach 2 plus performance fighters, which we have been able to achieve with respect to our light combat aircraft. Now we are poised to be realizing the fifth generation fighter. And in this fifth generation fighter, already the design is complete, and we are visualizing that this will get realized by HAL and private sector forming a consortium. And for the first time in a fighter aircraft development, a propulsion system has been delinked from an aircraft development. As we know, that light combat aircraft program got highly stymied because we had major problems in realizing the Kaveri engine, which was necessary for that. And hence, for the fifth generation AMCA aircraft, we have diversified these two as two separate projects. And we are looking at aircraft now. Now, in this aircraft production, and also particularly in defense production, We are expecting major private sectors to be contributing. We have got the Tata, the L&T, the Wipro, Reliance, Mahindra, Bharat Forge, Lakshmi Machine Works in Tamil Nadu, MKU in Kanpur, Adani Defence, Ashok Leyland in Tamil Nadu, Alpha Design Technologies in Bangalore. So many of them are lined up. This list is not an exhaustive list. It is only an indicative list. And all of them are all going to be manufacturing not subsystems of military systems, but they are going to be manufacturing platforms for military systems. Those who are interested in this area, I request you to visit this variety of resources, particularly Ministry of Defense website. The Department of Defense Production website is known as the Make in India Defense website. Very rich content is already available. As far as those who want to understand about defense must definitely visit the Defense Expo. The current Defense Expo for the year 2022 is to be held in Gandhinagar in Gujarat from 10th to 13th March. There is a website that is launched for this. Already webinars are being conducted as a run-up to the Defense Expo. Those webinars can be freely registered in. I was in one webinar up yesterday, and we have another webinar which is coming up on 6th. Kindly go there. You will understand a lot about what is happening. On the years on which Defense Expo is not happening, then we have Aero India. So 1 year Aero India happens, 1 year Defense Expo happens. All even years Defense Expo, odd years Aero India. Aero India has also got a website, and the Aero India seminars are streamed online, and many are available even now on the YouTube for you to update yourself as to what people are talking about the defense manufacturing ecosystem in these major events of this country. Private sector indigenization effort is being encouraged by the government using a website called Srijan Defense. I request you all to go there. More than 30,000 items have been identified for indigenization, for which the details, the photographs and the technical details and the contact person details from all public sector units have been collated together and then presented to this region. I understand more than 10,000 items have been picked up from this, and many MSMEs have come forward in the indigenization effort. About the innovation for defense excellence, I already spoke about. Visit its website. And we have got the Society for Indian Defense Manufacturers, whose website is very useful, and they regularly keep conducting webinars, which can also be freely attended to. And we have an idea as an organization, Indigenous Defense Entrepreneurs Association, which website also you may visit. QTech Synergy is a highly technically focused website, which focuses on defense production. The FICCI Defense and the PhD Chamber of Commerce, for their website, their defense portion can also be visited. With all this information that is coming, we are believing that as we march towards our 100th year of independence, we will be reaching towards major production of weapon systems being made in the country. But we have got challenges. The major challenges come from here because electronics is an integral part of all our weapon systems, be it flight systems, be it naval systems, be it army systems. Unfortunately, the silicon chip manufacturing does not take place in this country. And hence, a major effort has been launched by the government towards encouraging manufacture of silicon chips in this country. The application-specific integrated chips for military applications suffer from this problem that they are specific, but they demand very high design challenges and they are required in low volumes. How to make it viable? It will be possible only if you manufacture for the world. We have a major problem in production of specialized metals and alloys. Aircrafts which are flying, the spacecrafts which are flying, they all require special aluminum alloys. Without that, it is extremely difficult for us to make them. For the lightweight guns to be made, titanium is an extremely important element. Unfortunately, we don't make aerospecific titanium aluminum alloys, nor are we very good at titanium. Thanks to the effort of ISRO, that considerable amount of indigenization for spacecraft has taken place, but aircrafts, still the material is being imported. In an aircraft which is to be made in this country, however much LCA design is ours, more than 45% of the cost of that aircraft will still go to foreign because we don't make the metals which are necessary to make that aircraft. And hence, we are now focusing on addressing this issue. Midhani Misra Dhatu Nigam Limited has been tasked with this. We don't manufacture very sensitive sensors. All those sensors are still imported. Considerable amount of these sensors of the pressure variety, of the temperature variety, of the vibration variety, of so many other varieties are required, but we don't manufacture. Particularly with respect to high energy chemicals and the adhesives and sealants which go along with this, we are also not very rich on this. We need to really develop ourselves onto this. The high-tech R&D that is required has got to be derived from our academia, and private sector will have to participate in this. This is another area where we need to really move forward, and government is really coming forward. In the current budget, 25% of the R&D budget has been reserved for the private sector and academia to participate for the defense. Precision machine tools, which are required for precision manufacturing in terms of the 5-axis machines and the 6-axis machines, are not being manufactured in this country. We need to address that, and government is already taking cognizance of it and encouraging machine tool industry to come forward and then develop this. For all these things to happen, we will be able to establish an ecosystem, but that ecosystem is viable in the long term only if there is a matching export opportunity. Manufacturing military hardware is one, exporting the military hardware is another, and it can be done only with the government support. These are some of the key challenges. Apart from this, there are a number of other challenges that can be listed. But for the time being, if we address these challenges, and then because of these challenges, the opportunities which are coming out of it, that itself will be a very encouraging input for us. In summary, we must realize the defense sector is, in economic terms, it is called as monopoly. There is only one single purchaser, and that purchaser is government. And hence, since the government is the only purchaser, government also needs to be the facilitator, because he will purchase only what he has facilitated, and hence government role has got to be a major one. This is not an open economy. We must realize that it is a monopoly economy, and we must understand this and for us to operate onto this. Military requires platforms, they require ships, they require aircraft, they require tanks, but they all get made because of the technologies and the subsystems which are being manufactured by multiple manufacturing agencies. And then one or two system integrators who actually acquire these subsystems and integrate them and then make them into platform. So we need to have system integrators, and then a viable and a robust and reliable supply chain established for this. And in this supply chain, we cannot have too many foreign elements. We need to have mostly Indian sourced ones. And hence, private sector has got to be coming in, and particularly MSME sector will have to get involved deeply into this. I have indicated some of the web resources which are available for us to become more aware and become current with respect to these opportunities. I have mentioned about the materials and technologies which need development, and I can assure you in this audience that there is systematic progress that is being made for us to meet these challenges. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. I am now thankful to you for listening to me very patiently. I am open to questions. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. That's a great presentation. Request you to stop sharing the screen. Wonderful, sir. That's quite an informative session in terms of understanding the canvas and the infrastructure that we already have to begin to understand the implications and the preparedness to fulfill the aspirations of Atmanirbharta as a concept in itself. I think there's a huge information gap as far as a common man or an interested person in India is concerned to get into this subject, but you have simplified it and put it together. There could not have been a better presentation for the benefit of common man, the way you have actually presented. Wonderful, sir. Thank you very much for this. It has captured various phases, how the defense capability developed in India across several years after our independence, and the establishment of defense corridors for special focus, and how DRDO as an organization of labs is spread across the country and is focusing on various subsectors. That was also a very, very informative session. And interestingly, the emerging tie-ups with various IITs across the country, young scientists labs, is pretty interesting for us. I am sure that is additional area where new research and development will take place, and they will also chip in to make everything in India. And I'm sure slowly, as we get into the challenges that you have explained, there are multifold challenges, and you have identified several of those challenges, namely manufacturing of silicon chips, special metals itself, as well as the machine tool industry. And some of the important things that you have identified and highlighted is about emergence of private sector into defense, and the requirement of MSME to come in a big way. And once this is coordinated, it's a large canvas. Once this is coordinated very well and synthesized properly, I'm sure we will be inching towards our aspirations of Atmanirbharta in defense through all these defense manufacturing sector plans that we have with us. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Without wasting much time, I would jump into the Q&A session with your permission. And to start the Q&A session, I'll request Professor R. Prasad to join. Professor R. Prasad is Director Academic Wing at ICFAI, and he is the architect of the latest program that we have launched. It is called Online MBA Program. And Professor R. Prasad comes with a rich experience of 3 decades in entrepreneurship, in professional work, apart from academic work, all put together 3 decades. He is from, is an alumnus of IIT Bombay and the prestigious IIM Calcutta. I request Professor Prasad to start the first cluster of questions. And for your information, these clusters are made out of the questions raised by all the participants at the time of registration. And to have a coherent discussion, they are clustered in a manner that we can understand the subject much better, and request the guest speaker to also respond in a particular manner. So over to Professor Prasad to start the first cluster. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Rao. So that was an excellent presentation, particularly considering that this is a very, very complex terrain, and which, people, a lot of us who belong to the private sector, or maybe even those who belong to the public sector, are very far away from. So one of the major objectives that we have in the Q&A session is to understand a little more specifically, for those who belong to the private sector world, and the kind of capabilities and talents that people have around. We have a lot of engineers, we have a lot of software engineers, we have a lot of startups. So my emphasis will come from there, so that there is some sort of a understanding between the two worlds, and we are able to understand a bit more of this very, very complex topic, apart from what has been presented. To begin, sir, the first cluster is at a slightly macro level. And I emphasize some of the points that you've made. The first is about the strength is something that strength respects. Very, very complex world, getting even more complex. And I think you laid out some of the dimensions of organization, initiatives, funding, and frameworks that are currently in place. And I think where we are going to focus is about what lies ahead. And that what lies ahead, I'm just recollecting the first case that you took for the Tejas light combat aircraft, which has private sector participation. And I think you have talked about AMCA, which is a little more futuristic. And out of the initiatives, I'm indicating the ASIC chips, because a lot of engineers around, and I think they can understand, connect to what you're trying to talk about there. And I think the major thing that you have emphasized is that this needs to be manufacturing for the world, which also means that some of the competencies and some of the competitive advantage that we gain, the quality will have to be global if you want to reach that place. So with that, I come to the first question, sir. You have indicated the geopolitical issues which are driving priorities in defense, and also, some of the challenges. Now, for us laymen to get an idea of how big this is, and I think it is pretty big compared to GDP of the country, how big is the opportunity size for the private sector if you include hardware, services, software, in terms of revenue and investment? Can we get some idea of that, sir?
Okay, thank you very much for the summary that you have made and also for this question. As far as the numbers are concerned, the defense forces procure from the market on two streams. One, which is called the capital acquisition. The second is the revenue procurement. The capital acquisition is the one that actually gets the platforms for the Navy, the ships, for the Air Force, the aircrafts, both the fighter and the transporter and the helicopters. For the Navy, for the Army, the guns, the tanks, and various other hardware which are necessary for us to fight, to organize the armed forces. The revenue procurement is that you have a fleet of hardware, and that fleet of hardware is to be sustained and maintained. Just simply having guns is not enough. It needs ammunition, and the ammunition has got to be manufactured in a very regular way. So that means we have got a considerable amount of inputs which have got to come from the revenue. So that means the armed forces procure from the capital side and from the revenue side. From the capital and revenue side, as of now, we have the defense public sectors and the ordnance factories contributing to nearly about 65% of the requirement. Most of them are being produced under license agreement from foreign countries, because if you are talking about Mirage aircraft, it has been acquired, the license has been acquired by HAL from France, and under that license that they are procuring this, and they are sourcing certain materials from France, they are sourcing certain materials from this country, and after that they are integrating this aircraft. By themselves, the private sector has contributed in a few areas significantly. Particularly, if you talk about the Pinaka rocket system, it has been developed indigenously completely in the country and being manufactured jointly by Tata and L&T together. So in case you take, these are all Pinaka system is a capital system. So that means that rocket system, in case you try to take it that way, and if you try to put that kind of a number onto this, then the numbers that we are talking about per year, what we will be acquiring from Indian private sector is likely to become of the order of 50,000 crores and more, is the kind of a money that we are talking about. In revenue procurement, if you talk about in terms of the ammunition, in terms of the troop comforts which are necessary, in terms of the transport vehicles that Ashok Leyland and Tata, Mahindra, that those people are actually producing onto this, that will be another 50,000 crores separately onto this. We want this capital one, which is now with the private sector contributing to less than about 50,000 crores, we want that to become about 85 to 90,000 crores within the next 2 to 3 years. That's where we are trying to push in towards private sector coming in. Military hardware is definitely a demanding hardware, and that hardware is a system. It is not just simply metal. It has got electronics, it has got software, everything integrated into it. And we need to put all of them together, which you mentioned is a world-class system, because military will not accept anything less than that, because military will have to be called upon to perform when every other avenue of saving this nation has failed. And that is the time military has got to perform, and military has only one aim: win, because there is no way that we are going to accept anything other than that. And hence, the numbers which are involved are all large numbers, but we need to actually break this over discussion into how much will it go towards hardware, how much will it go towards software, and how much it will actually go towards integration, how much towards capital, how much towards the revenue, which portion of revenue is sustainable over how many years. All these ones over discussion we will arrive at.
Thank you, sir. I think there's a very clear clarity there about the kind of escalation in participation that you're looking at from 50,000 crores to close to 90,000 crores in just one part of it over the next 3 years. I think that gives the audience some idea of what size we are talking about and what portion of the GDP it looks like, just to indicate that this is huge and it needs that sort of attention from a lot of people in this country. So the second part is a little more specific. In this, there are a lot of established private players with competencies for various reasons who will be called upon to participate. But what do you think is the space in this for startups? Startups are booming, and there are a lot of engineers and technologists around who are trying to create startups. So if you look at that space of startups in this, can we get a little more specific idea, at least in terms of how you think it's going to shape out?
That is an excellent one. We have realized the power of the startups. Prime Minister has really started this as a mission that we must have startups becoming unicorns, and we must encourage startups, and particularly in defense sector. In the Defense Expo, there is an India pavilion that is established. And that India pavilion particularly is dedicated towards supporting startups and encouraging startups to display their abilities for the country and also for the world. Because defense expos get attended very widely from people from all around the world that travel to the defense expo. The last defense expo, which took place in 2020, just before the COVID hit us in Lucknow, it had an India pavilion. In that India pavilion, I had an opportunity to interact with at least around 20 startups who had products to display there. And many of those products had been funded by the government using the IDEX funds, about which I indicated a little earlier. There is an Atal Innovation Initiative, Mission Initiative sponsored startup enabling infrastructure that is coming up in Coimbatore, which has been advanced by the Ministry of Defense. It is a 20 crore advance that has been given, in which number of private sector participants, particularly MSMEs, have been brought together, and many from the armed forces have been asked to become mentors for those projects, so that these small startups get the right kind of a guidance and their testing and evaluation process are all streamlined. And hence, for startups, this is a glorious time now for them to enter into the defense forces, particularly the IDEX initiatives, and also watch out for many of those opportunities which are being given under the indigenization initiatives. The Technology Development Fund, which is being spawned by DRDO, you must do, and ensure that you offer yourself for the technologies that you think that you are capable of doing to the respective public sectors in whose platform your technology can actually find a place. If you are not able to find the right kind of a solutions for this, please join the societies like SIDM or the IDEA, who are capable of bringing in the right kind of a mentors to the startups at no cost at all, because I volunteer for this kind of a work when it is actually brought up to me. And I have great pleasure in spending my time in guiding many of the startups. For startups, it is a glorious time now to start off onto this. You start off something on defense, and you will find what you learn in that will spawn out opportunities for you to be deploying for the civil requirement also. Never is defense requirement is exclusively defense. And hence, you will find it is facilitated in defense. It is stringent, it is challenging, but at the same time, you will get opportunities for you to actually market your knowledge otherwise also.
Thank you very much, sir. I think that's a very, very clear what to do kind of guidance for those who are looking at the startup space. You've given clearly three initiatives are already in place: IDEX, indigenization initiative, technology development front. You also suggested for those who want to understand a bit more the kind of mentoring support which is available. Thank you, sir. Sir, the next question is about the current situation where we have got robo soldiers being deployed on the border. You got fifth generation aircraft. You mentioned about stealth bombers, and then General Naravane touched upon the future of warfare, information battlefield in networks and cyberspace in some article which appeared today. So there appears to be a lot of software in this, sir. And your presentation, of course, the topic is about manufacturing. But if you want to give a little more idea to a lot of software is something that India is has got very high capabilities on compared to the hardware side. So if you want to throw a little more light on this future, sir, and what kind of dimensions this will take on that kind of a software with respect to the platforms and the systems that you're talking about, could you spend a little time on that, sir?
Thank you very much. I have spent my time considerably in software development and deployed those softwares for the military, and hence I'm passionate about it, so I can go on for hours together, but taking the constraint of the time, I'll speak for a few minutes on this topic. There is no military hardware now which is without software. Probably the software is the most predominant content into this. Anything that is there needs to be controlled. Now we don't go into a Rambo kind of a army, of one-man army. Everything gets integrated on a network. In a network, they all are situationally aware. If we want even a soldier to be reasonably situationally aware of his environment so that he can deliver the best that is possible for him when he is faced with challenges. So because of this, the soldier system onwards to the highest military platforms of the challenging military platforms like fighter aircraft and all of them are rich in software. And this richness in software is being achieved purely because of our software development efforts, which are available within this country. And we need to develop this much further ahead. There are two things that are involved. One is to develop the application-specific integrated circuits for which the design of assets is a huge area by itself. To encourage this design, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, MeitY, has already propounded a design-linked incentive scheme for ASIC design and development. And funds for this are available with them. You would just need to actually propound an idea and then go ahead. I am aware of an excellent initiative. Just for one example, not only one, hundreds of examples are there, is that there is a group that is working towards having image intensifiers, that if you actually get a blurred image, how do we actually go about intensifying that image and then presenting it? How do we get information from multiple sensors and overlay them and then present a cogent picture? Particularly in border areas, in border management, we have got vibration sensors which have been placed much ahead of the fence that we have established along our border. And on the fence itself, there are multiple sensors which are available, which looks for heat and movement variations. And behind the fence in our own area, we have got the infrared sensors, we have got the ultraviolet sensors, and we have got the visible light sensors. When we get information from these multiple sensors, they need to be coalesced together, need to be overlaid together, and need to be presented for the people to take their decisions. For all these things, we require considerable amount of software. The fighter aircraft, like I was telling, it is all flight equation, and that flight equation has got to be realized within an aircraft and in an aircraft kind of a reliability environment in which multiple tiers of redundant systems have got to be built in. All of them are taking place only because of software. Any missile that flies, that missile firing and its flight, everything is controlled from a software which is on the ground systems and also on the missiles. We have got fire and forget missiles which have artificial intelligence capabilities, which can take on a kind of a target, loiter around an area, and then look for the most threatening target and then launch itself onto this, or wait for orders to launch itself onto this. Everything is software driven. So in case you think in terms of software, opportunities are aplenty. But having known these opportunities are aplenty, where do I start? One is that if you have software capability, please approach the DRDO and then inform them about your capabilities. They will definitely guide you as to which DRDO lab is interested in this type of software, and they will take you onto this. If you are actually interested in supporting any of this private sector, please inform all these major private sectors who are system producers and inform them about it. They will take on. Army has got an Army Design Bureau, ADB as it is called as. Inform the Army Design Bureau what your abilities that you got and where you can contribute. Some of the major drone manufacturing and intelligent drones which are required for the armed forces are all being encouraged to the Army Design Bureau. These are some of the indicative areas where we can start our work.
Excellent, sir. I think, you've also shown the destination as to what people with ideas can do. And I think a lot of good educational institutions, when you talk about ASIC and you've talked about METI and the funding that you can get, I think those who are proactive, this is a huge avenue for them to take up, try at least, if not get projects. And given the number of institutions we have across the country, I hope we'll be able to move onto that. Sir, there are more questions. I think we are very, very hard pressed for time. So I'll leave this cluster here and then I hand it back to Professor Sudhakar.
Thank you very much, sir. At one moment, it looked like you have simplified the whole issue. And as we are talking about it, again, it is becoming complex because of the magnitude of the focus and the emerging opportunities that it entails. It is becoming bigger and bigger again. But one thing that has caught my attention is the requirements of defense are not always exclusive. I think that's the changing mindset, and you have actually stated it. And it looks like it is more participative. Private players can now enter into it and actually chip in their contribution with respect to software, with respect to hardware, so on and so forth. And the avenues that are available are very clearly identified and highlighted by you. Thank you, sir. I'll take short questions here from the audience. And one is, what are the major achievements as far as this shared vision of Made in India or Atmanirbharta is concerned? What are the achievements in this Atmanirbharta in defense sector after we have very strongly started propagating this message? Any one or two or three important milestones that we can count?
Yeah, definitely there are areas where we have contributed significantly. Particularly, we have decided that we will not import easily. We will import only to sustain ourselves, but the future growth and future development of this country will actually be coming from indigenous efforts. Like I was telling you about the Pinaka rocket system, which was designed, developed by the private sector nearly about 15 years ago. Now, with the Atmanirbharta having come in, they have upgraded that system. And now that Pinaka system, which was having an effectiveness over a distance of around 60 kilometers, has now been made up till 90 kilometers, which was earlier not a guided rocket. Now it is being made into a guided rocket, which is a major achievement. We have been wanting to build our own aircraft carrier. We had launched our aircraft carrier at Cochin dockyard earlier. And this aircraft carrier is now likely to be having our own aircraft flying. LCA has successfully landed on the deck of this trial deck for this aircraft carrier, which is a major achievement. We are believing that AMCA will definitely be a one which will be a multi-role fighter, not only from land, but also from a deck of an aircraft carrier that it will be able to take on. On the drone side, we have definitely come much ahead onto this. We have had the drone menace that along the border area, that our not so friendly neighbors were using drone as an irritant for us. We have been able to find some reasonable antidotes in a very quick time frame for this. For the extreme cold weather clothing, because our troops had to be alerted all across a hostile terrain in the border. For this extreme cold weather clothing, we were dependent earlier. Now, many indigenous sources have been identified, and very soon bulk procurement will take place from them. This is the way in which Atmanirbharta begins. There is no way that we are going to be making a huge project within a matter of 1 or 2 years of announcement of Atmanirbharta. It will take a decade or so for us to make some very tangible ones. Have we achieved major platforms? No, honestly, it is not. Are we going to achieve? Definitely we are going to achieve. There is no doubt at all about it. Are we in the road for it? Yes, we are definitely in the road for it. This Atmanirbharta, after having been earlier Make in India, was just simply bringing in manufacture in the country. Atmanirbharta is ensuring that the whole supply chain, which is critical, is within this country. And the whole knowledge chain is also within this country. This is a long-term project which will build patiently, but we need to build rapidly.
Wonderful, sir. I think this is the crux of the entire webinar, where it has completely clarified to us that Atmanirbharta is something, the moment it is proposed, it's not going to take off. An entire ecosystem has to be built. We are in the right direction. We have milestones. Certainly we have milestones. You have highlighted 4 of them. And it is not a sprint and it's a marathon, an indicative summary of what you have mentioned. In terms of the rocket systems that we have been manufacturing over several years, aircraft carrier, which you mentioned, and the third one is significant improvement in terms of the drones and the requirement in manufacturing. And the fourth one is the extreme hostile weather conditions. To take care of that, the clothing is something which will be indigenously manufactured, and several sources, both private and government, are working together on that. These are very, very significant and important milestones, sir. So in the same breath, I would like to understand, for the consumption of all of us to understand very easily, what are the challenges that we face in being Atmanirbhar in defense? There are challenges for Atmanirbharta in every sector. We understand that. But especially in defense manufacturing and services sector, starting from design, development, what are the challenges that we face towards realizing this dream of Atmanirbharta?
Okay, sir. This is a deeper question, but I will touch upon some of the key issues. First and foremost, it is necessary that we must have a skilled workforce towards it, both from the design point of view and subsequently from the manufacturing point of view. Defense is a highly demanding sector. There cannot be failures. It has got to be soldier-proof, and the system has got to perform every time, and for which defense actually practices as to how do we actually fight the battle. So training is something: sweat more in war to bleed, to sweat more in peace to bleed less in war, is a kind of an adage which we normally go by. The major amount of training systems are to be developed for this. For this, we require a dedicated workforce which is aware of the military exacting requirements. For this workforce to actually understand, they need to work with the existing ones, and some may be guided with our friendly foreign countries who have advanced so very well in this kind of area. When they actually design certain systems, they need to be tested. We don't have huge testing facilities. In the current budget, the testing facility has been funded, and we are expecting those funds will become reality in the next 2 years' time, and that we will have some world-class testing facilities which will be coming up. For our training requirements, IIT Madras has taken a major initiative by establishing a virtual reality corridor within IIT Madras in the haptics lab of theirs, where we are visualizing that virtual reality will start dominating military training in another 5 years to come, and that we need to bring workforce which is necessary for virtual reality. We will use virtual reality itself to develop that kind of a workforce in the method by which we are now going into it. These are all multiple areas where we are doing. We need to have more people coming onto this, and more people will come in case the funding takes place. As it is monopoly, it has got to be government funding, and government funding is now getting diverted towards this because the government is focused on this effort. As we do on this, when we do virtual reality for military, that virtual reality will help the medicine, will help the education, will help the civil sector equally or sometimes better than what we have visualized earlier also.
Fantastic, sir. I think that's a fantastic overview of the challenges and the focus areas probably to move forward with respect to achieving our dream of Atmanirbharta. Skilled workforce is required to understand the demanding nature of requirements of the defense sector itself. Testing facilities have to be established everywhere, and the emerging dominance of virtual reality in training these workforces and everyone is a wonderful development that is already happening with the virtual reality corridor that is established at IIT Chennai. Thank you very much, sir. I will quickly take up one question asked by a participant on the chat box. Sir, do we have EMP technology, electromagnetic pulse technology? China is developing the technology and using it to crash the F-35 of USA, which is the world's greatest fighter jet. Your response, sir.
Yes, I would definitely say some of those things, the very many details of this may not be very pertinent that we discuss in a forum like this, but I can definitely assure you that any kind of an unconventional weapon systems in terms of energetic materials, particularly EMP, laser, high power laser, various other portions are being experimented, and we have certain results also to report. And I can assure the audience that definitely our scientific community is up ahead on this area. We need a lot to cover into this because the basic ingredients to make these kinds of things, those materials necessarily are getting imported at this point. As we build our material capability in this country, we will rapidly advance in this, but be assured that we are already in it.
Yeah, that's quite a reassuring answer, sir, that we are already in it. We are at it, and probably there's a lot of ground to cover as well. With this, what I will do, sir, is now hand it back to Professor Prasad for picking up one or two questions in his next cluster, and then I'll come back to wrap it up. Professor Prasad.
Thank you, Professor Rao. I'll take a slightly more deeper question, sir. There are not a number of factual questions maybe that can be understood on the web or otherwise, or maybe in a specific session. But this question is about, I'm starting with culture, because now you've got private sector and then startups who have a different culture, then you've got defense, and you've got the government. So it becomes very complex. So if you want to land into good solutions where you have got zero risk, zero defect, very high risk, very high return kind of a situation, culture is going to play a very important role, and we need mechanisms by which this can be built into the way things progress, and particularly the people dimension is the most important dimensions here. So how do you see this, the evolution there? You've got existing defense staff, you got a lot of retired staff, and then you've got the training systems that you want to get into, plus you want to move into the, there is a lot of management involved in this in terms of project management, technology management, many other things. How do you address this cultural issue and set up the kind of talent ecosystem which is needed? What is your vision for it?
Okay, thank you very much for asking this question. This is a profound and deep question. I will take the example of as to how the space sector got developed in this country. Space sector is supposed to have achieved such kind of a great milestones, which has put this country in the international map, that we are capable of sending a spacecraft go as far as Mars, and that repeatedly we can take on Chandrayans and then succeed in it very well, is a kind of an indicator as to how we have moved this space technology. How this has become possible, because the space technology has been spurred by the government, and those who actually retired from the school which the government actually built up have helped considerable amount of private entrepreneurs to come and contribute toward this, and because of this they built an ecosystem. It is a similar kind of a thing which has got to happen with defense. It is extremely difficult for those who are outside the defense to actually relate to the finickiness, to the kind of an exacting requirements which the defense asks for. In case something has got to function at minus 20 degrees centigrade, we will take it to the minus 20 degrees centigrade into that snow and then we will try it. Any kind of a simulation will not satisfy us because finally the soldier has got to handle this. And when he handles this, 100 things will go wrong. And you will have to anticipate as to how things will go wrong, and you will have to correct all of them, and you will have to build all these things into your design. So simply a lab working model will not become a soldier-proof model to be deployed. For this understanding to take place, necessary the DRDO scientists, the engineers who are there as part of the Army, Navy, and Air Force and the Coast Guard, all of them will have to work together with the industry. Major industries may be able to hire them as consultants, whereas medium and small scale industries need to come together and then pool their resources together and then seek this, or may seek the government help to ensure that such kind of an help is available. But one thing that I can assure you, that if you look around in your neighborhood, there is considerable amount of ex-armed forces personnel who are knowledgeable on this are available. If you go to anybody and then request that person to help you into this, either he or she will help, otherwise he or she will put you through to somebody who will actually help. With that only, we will be able to do things. Wherever these initiatives are being taken in academia, like in IIT Madras virtual reality, since the IIT Madras is there, IIT Madras is capable of bringing in considerable amount of military knowledge into this, because they can be solicited, they can be put as associated professors, and they can actually share this kind of information. And I can assure you that on the YouTube and on the net, considerable amount of information is also available. So start somewhere, get linked with somebody onto this, then you will understand. The engineering remains the same. It is the ruggedization of this engineering, making it soldier-proof, and passing through the test and validation methods are the ones which makes it challenging, which can be learned over a period. And definitely we will have a group of people and a society of people who are actually groomed into this area. And within a matter of another 4 or 5 years, we will have significant numbers who will have the tipping point to bring about this change.
That's an excellent degree of clarity, sir. I think you have motivated us by citing the space sector, that this is immensely doable. And if you can hit Mars, then this can also be done. And I think you've also pointed out that the defense sector related members will play a very important role in making this happen, whether they are part of the existing teams or part of the retired teams. And there are many of them around who can help that. I think those are the first two stepping stones in order to build up this kind of a talent pool and reach that tipping point that you have mentioned. Thank you very much, sir. I hand it back to Professor Sudhakar.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. So one interesting aspect as we deliberate on this is with the advent of private sector into defense manufacturing systems, with their involvement in indulgence, the natural question that comes is how the IPR issues are tackled in the defense projects. Any help for us to understand that aspect?
Thank you very much. We are in Atmanirbharta, when we are actually bringing in, we are definitely wanting the design development to be done in this country and to be possessed by those people who are known to be Indian, so that the Indianness of this whole product is established right from the beginning. Towards this, a robust intellectual property assessment and crediting mechanisms are all being developed. For example, in the Technology Development Fund, the TDF fund, when you are actually working with DRDO, when a product gets developed, the complete IPR related with that is vested with that agency. There will be certain restrictions towards deploying this IPR for any other agency, because for that a permission might have to be taken. But even this also will ease over a period of time, because if there are sensitiveness of this technology is the only thing that will be coming in. This way, in major initiatives which are going to be funded by the government, we want to give either independent IPRs to that agency or a joint IPR in which the dominant partner will be the private sector partner. Without that private sector ability and the agility, we do not think that we will be able to achieve this rapid Atmanirbharta goals that we have set for ourselves. For this, we need to have a set of highly dynamic managers who have got to be brought in. We have got to have a legal set of people who have got to be trained onto this on IPR related issues, how to integrate them into this contract. A major contract management professionals have got to be brought in. So it is not just simply technology. Considerable amount of other structures have got to be brought in. NALSAR, which is a law university, has started a defense law course primarily because we requested them that this is one area where we do not have people. We want to have people onto this. And now they have started producing people, and now people have started doing masters in that and PhDs in that, and they're all helping us. And all of them are going to be addressing these IPR related ones. And we are going to have aviation laws, which will be very soon coming in for our own design portions of the aviation, space laws, which are going to come in for our own spacecraft design portions and managing IPRs onto this. And I can assure you, the IPR scene is going to become better and better. But initially, there will be certain restrictions that we have to tolerate.
Amazing, sir. Amazing clarity. And it is an invitational pitch for various private players to walk into willingly and be sure of the fact that there is an existing robust thought about protecting intellectual properties, and as well as there is a definite direction towards making it more agile for the private participant. And that's fantastic. That is what is required for more and more talented private players to get into this thing and be part of the shared vision of what we are discussing, that is Atmanirbharta. Thank you very much, sir, for this elaboration. Another question, which is little generic, but connected to what we are all talking about. What kind of leadership is needed in order to fulfill the vision of Atmanirbharta? That is the question which we request you to respond to, sir.
Thank you. Excellent kind of a question. The leadership is the demand of the hour. At this point, we need to have this belief. Many of us who want to be part of the leadership community, we need to have this firm belief that this country can do, will do. And having built that belief, they should know as to which way they are going to set visions for their own organizations and how they are going to relentlessly pursue these visions. For this, we need to have leaders who have agility in their thinking, who have ability to impress upon our young talents to stay focused and then contribute, and then bring forward their contribution to the limelight so that they get encouraged. We must be able to pitch for the venture capitalists and the financing institutions so that you are able to give the short term, the medium term, and the long term visions. You are able to have the considerable amount of legal understanding, the contractual abilities to execute contracts, and then ensure that it succeeds onto this. And when there are minor failures as to how you correct them and then come out of it, all of them, that you should be able to do it. Under all these things is in a pandemic kind of an environment that you will have to do. So the leaders whom we are calling for are all the multi-headed, multi-handed, multifaceted, multi-capability leaders whom we have got to build. I am believing that ICFAI and other organizations who are building leaders will address these kinds of requirements of leadership under this pandemic situations, especially manufacturing leadership and leadership for Atmanirbharta.
Wonderful, sir. On that very important, optimistic mention of leadership for Atmanirbharta, we could probably wrap up the session today with so much to go by, so much to ask and learn from you. I will still save these questions and send it across by email to you and request for some reply. But in the interest of time, we will probably take a break here and we celebrate the learning that we already have gathered with your august presence on the webinar and the session today we have had, sir. Leadership is tested every time, especially it is tested when we have to reorganize ourselves and work towards a particular shared vision, especially in the wake of Atmanirbharta, not just in terms of a leadership that is theoretical, but leadership which is in practice in terms of manufacturing, in terms of all other systems of the ecosystem that we are talking about, which is required for Atmanirbharta, is very clearly spelled out. And that is what is going to be encouraging to majority of us who are across the screen today, those young engineers, people in technology, working in other private sectors as well, but they have got a fine deco into what is this defense manufacturing system is about today with your lecture and with your responses to those important questions, sir. Thank you very much. And I want to, on behalf of the ICFAI group and on behalf of Professor Prasad and everybody, including our Honorable Vice Chancellor who has joined and he's listened to the entire session, on behalf of everyone, all the participants, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for simplifying this very complex topic. Probably it was complex. We need to listen to more and more talented soldiers like you who can help us understand this hitherto exclusive concept of defense manufacturing. And then probably we learn, we look up for more and more information on the websites that you have given, and then probably be part of this, at least the shared vision of Atmanirbharta. Otherwise, these things are theoretical. These things look like some lessons in the textbook, but when we get to talk to people like you, sir, I think we get to learn a lot, and we have learned quite a bit today in the 90 minutes that you have spent with us till now. Wonderful, sir. Amazing lessons. We will write a summary and we will get back to you on that. We will share a copy of all the structured takeaways that we have from this session. And we'll also share the recording with you and with all the members on our archive section of the website. But one very interesting thing that I have looked at is, with experience from ex-defense people like you, people who have already partnered with the defense manufacturing system, that is the private players, slowly there is an interest that is swelling up. Emerging technologies, more private player participation, and the government is also sharing a lot of information, and we also get to know that this information is already available, but we need to take a keen interest in this. With all these things, I think not just the Atmanirbharta concept, but the participative mindset in the security systems in the interest of this country is something which has been stepped up quite a bit over a period of time. Yes, as you highlighted, sir, there's a long way to go, but we are in the right direction. So on these summary points, I would like to once again thank you for your wonderful time and expertise that you have shared with us. We would like to get back to you and learn more, sir. Thank you very much for this session.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the great opportunity, and must thank all the participants for their incisive and the focused questions that they raised. I thoroughly enjoyed. Jai Hind.
Jai Hind, sir.
Jai Hind, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next Friday on February 11th with yet another leader who is going to talk about FMCG and brands and the brands that people have developed. And the topic is going to be sensory branding strategies for one of the very special brands that has emerged from Hyderabad and gone to across the country. We will see you at 7:30 p.m. on Friday next, that is on February 11th. Thank you very much. Do take care and stay safe. Jai Hind.